At 4:26 a.m. on October 20th, 2025, the internet literally forgot who it was. It started with a tiny glitch in a data center in Northern Virginia, a place most of us never even think about, but it's actually the heart of the modern web. Within minutes, that one mistake turned into a total blackout for millions of people. If you tried to open Snapchat, it wouldn't load. If you tried to move money in your bank app or trade crypto, you were just staring at a spinning circle. Even Amazon's delivery drivers were stuck on the side of the road because their scanners and maps just stopped working. To understand why this happened though, you have to understand our massive hidden reliance on AWS, Amazon Web Services. Most of us think of Amazon as a store, but their real power is the cloud. They own the literal buildings and millions of servers that other companies rent so they don't have to run their own. When you use an app, you aren't usually connecting to that company's office. You're connecting to an Amazon data center. The weird part about this specific collapse is that the computers themselves weren't actually broken. The problem was that Amazon's internal phone book had been shredded. It wasn't a failure of the internet as a whole, but a failure of the directions provided by AWS. A tiny piece of their own code had accidentally deleted the records that tell your computer or phone where an Amazon-hosted website lives. Because so much of the world depends on their infrastructure, the impact was total. It was like waking up in a city where every street sign had been painted over and every GPS was suddenly blank. Not because the roads were gone, but because the map had simply vanished. The thing is, it got even worse. Because every phone and smart device on the planet is programmed to keep trying to reconnect if it can't at first, in this case, they all started hammering the system at once. It was like a billion people trying to squeeze through a single door at the same time. When Amazon finally got it fixed 15 hours later, the damage was over $500 million. It was a wake-up call that we aren't just using the cloud. We're completely dependent on it, and when that one spot in Virginia fails, the whole world stands still. The real irony here is that the internet was actually designed to make sure a disaster like this never happened. If you go back to the 1960s, the world was obsessed with surviving a nuclear war, and the military's communication systems were a mess. They were built like a city that only has one massive highway leading into it. It's efficient for a while, but the flaw is obvious. If that one road gets blocked or destroyed, the entire city is cut off. The whole system had a single brain that could be targeted, and if you knocked it out, everything else was paralyzed. In 1962, a researcher named Paul Barron came up with a wild alternative. Instead of that one big highway, he envisioned a network. Imagine that same city, but now it's connected by thousands of small, winding back roads and side streets. In this model, every point on the map is connected to its neighbors in a giant mesh. Information doesn't have to rely on a single path. It can take any number of different routes to get where it's going. If 20% or even half of the roads are wiped out, the traffic doesn't stop. It just finds a new way to reach its destination. But in order to make this work, they had to solve a major problem. How do you move a massive amount of data through a bunch of small, unpredictable roads? The answer was termed packet switching. In the old communication systems, phones, you had to hold one entire line open for a single conversation. It was like driving a semi-truck that took up the whole highway. Barron's idea was to chop that message into tiny independent packets of data. Think of it like taking a long letter and turning it into 100 individual postcards. Because each postcard is small and has the final address written on it, they don't all have to travel together. One postcard can take the main road, another can take a side street, and a third can detour through a different city entirely. If one road is blocked, only a few postcards are delayed. The rest just keep moving through whatever gaps are left in the mesh. When they all finally arrive at the destination, they get reassembled back into the original letter. This was the dream. A communication system that was impossible to break because it didn't have a center. A communication system that was built like a web. A world wide web. For a few decades, we actually had that. But over time, as the internet became a tool for making money, we slowly began shifting backwards. In the 90s, if you were a company that wanted a website, you had to buy your own servers, rent space to keep them cool, and hire people to fix them when they broke. It was expensive and inefficient. If you bought enough computers to handle a holiday rush, most of them just sat idle for the other 11 months of the year. The solution was the cloud. The idea that computing power should be like electricity. You shouldn't have to own the power plant. You should just plug into the wall and pay for what you use. When Amazon launched AWS in 2006 and was shortly followed by Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud, it changed everything. It democratized the web. Suddenly, a two-person startup could use the same world-class infrastructure as a billion-dollar corporation. But there was a catch we didn't see at the time. We were all plugging into the exact same 3 power plants. The back roads were being being abandoned in favor of 3 massive, hyper-efficient highways. By 2025, this convenience turned into a trap. We saw it first with the AWS collapse in Virginia, but the fragility didn't stop there. Just a week later, Microsoft Azure, the backbone for much of the corporate world, hit its own breaking point. The issue is with a service that acts like a global air traffic controller. Its job is to look at all the available servers and direct your request to the one that's closest and healthiest. But a tiny mistake was made in the instructions sent to this traffic controller. It was essentially given a list of rules to check if a server was healthy and usable, but the list was accidentally left blank. Microsoft's system looked at the empty list and came to a terrifying conclusion. If it couldn't find a rule saying a server was good, then every single server they run must be bad. In an instant, the traffic controller began waving away every request, dropping them into a digital black hole. This wasn't just about websites being slow. It was physical. Airlines like Alaska and Hawaiian saw their check-in systems fail. Travelers were stranded at gates because digital boarding passes simply vanished. A single line of bad code in one office had effectively grounded flights halfway across the planet. Then, in November, the pressure moved to Cloudflare. Think of Cloudflare as a security guard that sits in front of about 20% of the entire web. Its job is to make sure that no bots and hackers can reach a website. To do this, it uses a security file that lists all the traits of a bad actor. During a routine update, an error caused this security file to accidentally double in size. The problem was that the security guard who reads the file couldn't remember one that big. When the guard tried to open the new oversized file, it basically had brain freeze and crashed. Suddenly, entry into all of the websites Cloudflare protects was locked down. Huge platforms like Shopify X and ChatGPT all flickered out because the security system meant to protect them had become the thing that broke them. We had built a system so centralized that even our shields had become a point of failure. The catastrophic failures of 2025 were an epiphany for the tech world in 2026. The industry finally had to accept a painful truth. Just being in the cloud doesn't make you safe. In fact, these systems have become so complex that no amount of traditional testing can prevent every glitch. So, instead of trying to build a perfect, unbreakable system, engineers have started doing something that sounds a bit crazy. They are intentionally breaking things. This is a philosophy called chaos engineering. The idea is that if you can't prevent failure, you have to practice it. It's like a fire drill for the internet. Companies now use automated programs that randomly shut down their own servers or cut off their own power during a normal workday. It forces the engineers to build systems that are self-healing. If a server in Virginia dies, the software should be smart enough to instantly move that work to Oregon or Ireland without the user ever noticing. By 2026, this has become the gold standard. If your system can't survive an attack by Chaos Monkey, the name of the tool developed by Netflix to do exactly this kind of testing, it's not considered ready for the real world. At the same time, big companies are finally moving away from relying on just one cloud provider. We're seeing a massive shift towards what's called active-active multi-cloud. Instead of putting everything on AWS, a bank or an airline might run its systems on AWS and Google Cloud at the same time. It's more expensive and harder to manage, but it means they are no longer at the mercy of one company's mistakes. If one provider crashes, the traffic is automatically and instantly rerouted to the other. We're also seeing a new level of scrutiny on what's called the AI supply chain. Today, a single chatbot or app isn't just one piece of code. It's a stack of different AI models and third-party tools all layered on top of each other. This creates a hidden risk. If a small AI filter that you've never heard of goes down, it can take your entire business down with it. This has caused leaders to treat every piece of external software as a potential trap. They are building asset registries, basically a giant list of every single digital ingredient in their product, so that when the next outage hits, they know exactly where the error is and how to cut it out before the whole system goes dark. The history of the internet is the story of a giant pendulum swing. We started in the 1960s with a dream of a decentralized web that could survive a nuclear strike. Then we swung towards the hyper-efficient, centralized cloud era, where we traded that safety for the convenience of having everything in one place. But the outages of 2025 proved that the pendulum had swung too far. We had built a digital world that was fast and cheap, but dangerously fragile. As we move through 2026, we're seeing that pendulum swing back. This isn't just a technical change, it's a shift in how we think about digital power. Governments are also stepping in, passing laws that require critical systems such as healthcare and finance to be independent and self-contained. They've realized that a country's banking system or its power grid shouldn't be at the mercy of a single data center thousands of miles away. We're finally moving back towards that original distributed mindset. The internet of the future is becoming a network of networks again, one where regional independence and a diversity of providers act as a digital immune system. We're learning that true resilience isn't about preventing every glitch, it's about building a web that can take a hit and keep moving. The decentralized dream of Paul Barron didn't die. It just had to be reinvented for a world where the threat isn't a missile, but a single line of bad code. By embracing failure, practicing for chaos, and refusing to rely on a single highway, we are building a web that is finally becoming as robust as it was always meant to be.